It's Monday, October 21st here in Korea, and these are the top stories at this hour. BOK Governor Lee says the U.S. China trade war has cut South Korea's growth for this year by 0.4 percentage points. Seoul's exports, meanwhile, dropped sharply during the first 20 days of October on year. We have the numbers. President Moon Jae-in invites the nation's religious leaders to the Blue House, seeking their support in bringing the nation together amid various political issues that have brought deepening social divide. Preliminary fine dust reduction measures are taken for the first time this fall in the Seoul metropolitan area as South Korea enters the fine dust season that's expected to last through March next year. Chilean authorities extend a curfew for a second consecutive night while broadening the state of emergency to multiple regions as nationwide protests over now canceled metro fare hike rage on, killing 8 so far. News Center begins now. Good evening to our viewers in Asia and hello to others watching from around the world. Welcome to Arirang News Center. I'm Handan in Seoul. Our top story this evening, BOK Governor Lee has, for the first time, put a specific figure on the impact the U.S. China trade war has on the local economy. He says it's expected to have lowered South Korea's growth this year by up to 0.4 of a percentage point. Our Hong-yu leading us off tonight.
The U.S.-China trade dispute has cost South Korea 0.4 percentage points of economic growth this year. Lee, the governor of the Bank of Korea, said during a press conference in Washington on Friday local time that half of the decrease was caused by a drop in exports due to tariffs imposed between Washington and Beijing. He said the remaining half is due to a slowdown in investment and consumption because of the economic uncertainties caused by the trade spat. He explained that South Korea cannot avoid the effects of the trade war, as a large amount of its exports go to the U.S. and China. In the first 20 days of October alone, South Korea saw a 19.5% decrease in exports on year, with semiconductor exports to China falling 20% on year. The IMF also expects South Korea to suffer most from the trade dispute, but the country's economic growth rate is expected to increase next year. Lee said there are predictions that the worst has been avoided, with the two economic superpowers reaching a Phase 1 partial trade agreement. And he added that the semiconductor business will also begin to recover from the middle of next year. Regarding interest rate cuts, Lee said that they are being careful in deciding whether to implement an additional cut because the interest rate is already low. He explained that it's very important for the central bank to have policy measures to counter recession if it arrives. Regarding the inflation rate, the Bank of Korea expects it to be at around 0% for the next 1 or 2 months. The low inflation rate has become a headache not just for the central bank, but for the entire world, to the point that it cannot be controlled through monetary policy. Instead, a harmonious mix of fiscal and monetary policy is needed for macroeconomic stability. Hong-yu, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in will give a speech tomorrow at the National Assembly on next year's budget, the 4th speech of its kind since taking office in 2017. Addressing lawmakers, the president is set to call for bipartisan support in reviewing and confirming next year's budget of 513.5 trillion won, or about $440 billion. He will speak about ways to breathe life into the Korean economy next year and explain the direction of the government's expansionary fiscal policy. President Moon Jae-in has invited the nation's religious leaders to the Blue House, seeking their support in bringing the nation together that is now sharply divided over a series of political issues. He asked religious circles to play a bigger role, especially in integrating the Korean people torn apart over prosecutorial reform. Our Park Hee-jun at the top office.
President Moon Jae-in says that despite efforts to unify Korean society in the past 2 years, the public remains divided.
지금 이제 2년 가까이 흘렀는데 국민 통합이라는 면에서는 우리들 나름대로는 뭐 협치를 위한 노력을 하기도 하고 또 많은 분야에서 통합적인 그런 정책을 시행하면서 나름대로 노력을 이제 해왔지만 그러나 뭐 이렇게 크게 그렇게 뭐 진척이 없는 것 같습니다.
The leaders of 7 major religious circles in the country, including Christian, Catholic, and Buddhist groups, were invited for a luncheon at the Blue House on Monday. President Moon discussed the ongoing conflict over reforming the prosecution and establishing a special unit for investigating corruption by high-ranking officials. He expressed concerns over the heightening political feud, leading to a more severe divide in society as the general elections draw near. President Moon first emphasized social integration last week during a meeting with his top aides, the day now former Justice Minister Cho Guk resigned from his post. Such remarks are seen as an apparent move to help Korean society recover after the appointment of Cho 2 months ago sparked large protests and counter-protests. But one thing gained from the strife, he says, is reconfirming the public's demand for fairness in society. He said people want the government to eradicate foul practices and unfair privileges, even the unfairness rooted in legitimate systems. The president asked for religious groups to do more to encourage healthy debate over how to achieve this.
그래서 정말 다시 한번 이렇게 당부드리고 싶습니다. 우리 그 국민 통합과 화합을 위해서 뭐 저희 대통령인 저부터 또 우리 정치 모두가 더 많은 노력을 기울였겠지만 또 역시 종교 주도들께서 더 큰 역할을 해주셔야겠다는 그런 말씀을 꼭 드리고 싶습니다.
President Moon also sought their wisdom in handling the difficult economic situation and a lack of progress being made in inter-Korean relations due to stalled nuclear talks between North Korea and the U.S. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
South Korea's Prime Minister Lee Nak-yeon will be heading to Japan tomorrow to attend the Japanese Emperor Naruhito's enthronement ceremony. He's also set to hold brief talks with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on Thursday, which is expected to give us some clues as to whether a summit between South Korea and Japan will be possible in the near future. Oh Jung-hee reports.
Prime Minister Lee Nak-yeon is heading to Japan for a 3-day trip on Tuesday to attend Japanese Emperor Naruhito's enthronement ceremony. Later in the day, the PM will attend the dinner banquet and exchange greetings with the Japanese emperor. Then on Thursday, he'll sit down for a brief one-on-one with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Lee is expected to deliver a friendly message from President Moon, calling for deeper cooperation and more amicable bilateral ties. Among South Korean politicians, Lee is regarded as a Japan expert, speaking fluent Japanese without the help of interpreters. Once a Tokyo correspondent for a South Korean daily and later a member of the Korea-Japan Lawmakers Union, Lee is known to be well acquainted with political and economic leaders in Japan. Once last year, Lee met with Emperor Naruhito.
We had an opportunity to talk about a lot of things when we met at the World Water Forum in Brazil.
His ties with Prime Minister Abe date back even further.
I remember drinking soju with him on a rainy weekend in Seoul when he came here in 2005 before becoming the chief cabinet secretary.
If the Prime Minister's Japan trip proves successful, eyes will turn to the possibility of a summit between South Korean President Moon Jae-in and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. That could happen naturally on the sidelines of the many international events taking place next month, such as the ASEAN Plus 3 Summit in Thailand and the APEC Summit in Chile. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Japan's exports to Korea fell near 16% on-year in September amid the ongoing dispute over Tokyo's export restrictions on Seoul. According to Japan's Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, the fall was twice the size of August's on-year fall of 8%. Imports from Korea also dropped around 9% in September. By product, Japan's exports of food and beverages, including beer, tumbled more than 60%, and auto exports dipped near 50%. Manufacturing equipment exports, including semiconductors, also fell by double digits. Japan's total exports in September dropped 5% on year, falling for the 10th consecutive month. The Japanese clothing brand Uniqlo has decided to pull a TV advertisement for what many in South Korea see as mocking the victims of Japan's wartime sexual slavery. Our Ji-young has more.
Uniqlo's latest advertisement has been criticized in South Korea for allegedly ridiculing victims of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement, the so-called comfort women. South Koreans denounced the commercial, saying it intends to make a political statement because there was a difference in meaning when the comments in English were translated into Korean. The advertisement displays a 98-year-old fashion icon and a 13-year-old fashion designer having a conversation in English in which the younger designer compliments the older one by asking how she used to dress when she was her age. The older designer replies, "I can't remember that far back." However, when that sentence was translated into Korean, it became, "How can I remember what happened more than 80 years ago?" Critics claim the addition of 80 years ago in the Korean subtitles was intended to ridicule South Korea's call for Japan to apologize for forcing Korean women into sexual slavery during the Second World War. Uniqlo denied the allegations, although it decided to halt airing the advertisement amid the growing outrage by South Koreans. In a statement released on Sunday, Uniqlo Korea said the ad was not intended to have any political motive, but rather the subtitles were meant to highlight their age difference. Some 200,000 women, mostly Korean, were forced into sexual slavery or hard labor under Japan's colonial rule from 1910 to 1945. Meanwhile, Uniqlo, which has taken a beating from South Korea's boycott of Japanese goods and services, has seen its sales nosedive. According to industry data on South Korea's credit card spending, Uniqlo's sales in September plummeted by roughly 75% on year. Uniqlo's sales figure for the last week of September in South Korea plunged to about $2 million from $8 million last year. Ji-young, Arirang News.
Fine dust pollution in Seoul today is at a level officially considered bad, the first time that's happened this fall. To bring down pollution levels, the capital and other cities are taking new measures, like a temporary ban on certain cars to keep it from getting worse. Our Lee Kyung-eun explains.
The level of fine dust pollution Monday morning in Seoul, the surrounding Gyeonggi-do province, and Chungcheongnam-do province was above 35 micrograms per cubic meter, a level considered bad on the government's official scale and in the opinion of residents.
I can see the difference in air quality day by day. I thought yesterday's air quality was bad, but it's even worse today.
Starting Monday, vehicles owned by public institutions have been put on a 2-day rotation system. Cars that end with odd number license plates can only be driven on odd number days, and vice versa. Public institutions have also shortened their working hours, while construction sites are taking strict measures to avoid making more dust. Air quality improved as the day went on, and an official from the Environment Ministry said this evening that the restrictions are not likely to be imposed tomorrow.
Many experts say that China is a major cause of South Korea's fine dust pollution, but South Korea is also responsible for it with a vast amount of car gas emission.
There is growing recognition that to reduce pollution will require collective, voluntary efforts, so people are willing to comply.
Citizens' participation may not bring dramatic change, but if it can bring as much as 1% of improvement and contribute to making better environment for future generations, it is worth the efforts.
The government also launched a nationwide crackdown Monday on vehicle exhaust. Until November 15th, provincial and city governments will be expanding their roadside inspections of diesel emissions. Those who refuse the test will be fined about $1,700, and those whose cars exceed the limits will be given 15 days to fix them. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
Prosecutors have requested an arrest warrant for the wife of former Justice Minister Cho Guk, who resigned last week while under investigation, along with his family, for corruption. Cho's wife, Chung Kyung-shim, faces 10 charges, including forgery of a presidential citation for her daughter and violating the capital law with respect to an allegedly suspicious investment. Chung is a professor at Dongyang University. Because of a brain tumor, it's understood that Chung can no longer participate in the investigation, but the prosecution apparently decided she needs to be arrested anyway. The Seoul Central District Court is expected to announce its decision on the warrant Thursday morning. North Korea continues its criticism against the U.S. following the breakdown of working-level talks earlier this month, this time bringing up the international sanctions imposed on the regime. The North's official newspaper, Rodong-Sinmun, reiterated calls Monday for Pyongyang to strengthen its self-reliance in the face of rising U.S. and Western imperialist pressure against the regime. The report stressed the need to resist sanctions, which it argues are aimed at regime change. It said catering to a compromise would eventually lead to a collapse, citing the cases of Iraq and Libya. And meanwhile, North Korea is denying that it's holding almost a dozen South Koreans against their will, people who were kidnapped by the regime when it hijacked a plane in 1969. Yonhap News Agency has released a copy of a letter sent by the regime 2 months ago to the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention. In it, the North rejects claims that the South Koreans are being detained, claims it calls another anti-Pyongyang scheme. Those claims were made in a petition to the UN by the son of one of the plane's passengers who, along with 10 others, never returned. Activist Hwang In-chul asked that the UN Working Group confirm whether his father is being held. In 1970, a year after the hijacking, North Korea released only 39 of the passengers. Chile is known as one of the most prosperous and stable countries in South America, but a recent increase in subway fares has sparked people in the capital city to rise up against the current government. Our Won Jung-hwan has the latest.
An increase in transport fares had initially led students to burst into subway stations and jump over entrance barriers without paying. But now, protests have turned violent, shaking this usually peaceful country in a way that hasn't been seen in years. The subway system was shut down entirely, and Chilean President Sebastián Piñera declared a state of emergency early on Saturday morning. The demonstrations first began on October 7th over recent hikes in subway fares. But even after the president announced that the increase of fares would be cancelled, demonstrators, especially the poor, continued their protest, venting their discontent over inequality and the high cost of living. The government responded with tear gas and water cannons, and soldiers and armed vehicles were deployed across the capital. At least 8 people have died in the unrest, and some 80 police officers and civilians were injured in the latest disturbances. The violence is something that hasn't been seen in the capital even during the protests that happened during the final days of General Pinochet's dictatorship in 1990.
I'm sad to see all this. I say that from my heart. I'm really sad because the bad things from this are going out to the world. That's what pains me most. I don't know what else to say.
You know, it would have been nice if everyone had come out and banged on pots and protested other ways. But this? Not even during the time that we had the conflict with Pinochet did we touch the metro, because we knew the metro was for us.
Chaos in the country has affected many everyday aspects of life. Sporting and cultural events were cancelled for the weekend, and schools were shut on Monday and Tuesday. Flights were delayed or cancelled at Santiago's international airport, and hundreds of passengers spent the night sleeping on the floor. South Korea's foreign ministry issued a travel warning for Chile on Monday as protests are escalating into nationwide riots. Won Jung-hwan, Arirang News.
The British government and the European Union managed last week to agree on a new deal over Brexit. But even some 3.5 years after the referendum, it looks like a lack of support from UK lawmakers is going to further delay Britain's departure. Our Oh Soo-young explains.
An extension to the United Kingdom's exit from the European Union is looking more and more likely by the day, following the House of Commons vote on Saturday for an amendment requiring the government to ask Brussels to extend the October 31st deadline. Prime Minister Boris Johnson was forced to send a document with the request, though without a signature. This came as a blow to Johnson's efforts to ratify a new deal reached with the EU on the terms of Britain's departure. Critics say Johnson's plan is only slightly different from former PM Theresa May's proposals. It suggests that Northern Ireland retains the EU's single market rules on trade with its southern neighbour, and that goods from the rest of the UK will be subject to tariffs if there's a risk of them crossing the border. But the plan seems to have failed to convince lawmakers, least of all those from the Democratic Unionist Party, which refuses to accept different terms of departure for Northern Ireland.
At this stage, everything is possible. We are in absolutely uncharted parliamentary territory here. There are roughly half of the members of parliament, about 300, 350, who have looked at what it means to leave the European Union without a deal and really don't like what they see. They've also seen the deal that the Prime Minister has brought back from Brussels, and really it doesn't suit anybody. There will be a delay that leaves everything on the table. We could still have a no-deal, very, very messy exit. The Prime Minister could still get his way, or this could even go back to the people either through a general election or, less likely, a people's vote second referendum.
Hundreds of thousands of people marched in London over the weekend for a second referendum on leaving the EU, which would take around 22 weeks to organise if pursued. In the meantime, Johnson is continuing to push for an on-time Brexit.
He still believes that this is the best he's going to get from Europe. He is probably right in that, and that because of the boredom in the nation, he will be able to force it through. He's going to make the meaningful vote now a legislative vote, which he hopes will be enough to win over enough of the waverers to give him victory. It probably won't be the 31st. It's not even enough time in Europe for them to conduct the appropriate scrutiny.
With just 10 days until the deadline, the government hopes to push through a meaningful vote this week. But observers say breaking the Brexit impasse won't be likely by that time. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Global Green Growth Week has officially kicked off in Seoul this Monday. Under the slogan of Unlocking Renewable Energy, the 5-day event gathers global governments, international organizations, and environmentalists to tackle climate change and promote sustainable development. Now in its third year, the Global Green Growth Week conference will include discussions on ways to create green jobs in the private sector and will see the launch of the Green Growth Index, an indicator designed to assess green growth performance worldwide. Samsung Electronics' latest foldable smartphone, the Galaxy Fold 5G, goes on full sale from today at both online and offline retailers. The model released last month could only be pre-ordered, and the number of units were limited. Galaxy Fold 5G comes in 2 colors, Cosmos Black and Space Silver, and it costs slightly over $2,000. When folded, the smartphone can be used in its compact size with a 4.6-inch display. However, when expanded, the screen is 7.3 inches, the largest display in the Galaxy smartphone line. Generations now have looked forward to having cars that can fly. Now that's closer to reality as South Korean researchers work on practical technology that can be commercialized. Our Yoon Jung-min has the story.
This moving computer graphic shows what it would be like when a personal air vehicle flies across the urban sky. A local aerospace research institute is working with automobile companies, aircraft manufacturers, and universities to develop these flying cars.
We have successfully manufactured and tested light aircraft using our own designs and technology over the last 5 years. Based on our know-how, we are currently participating in the personal air vehicle project.
Flying cars take off and land vertically using tilt rotors. They will not only be capable of flying but driving on the roads as well. Low-speed models can speed by at up to 100 kilometers per hour, while high-speed ones can fly as fast as 200 kilometers per hour.
South Korean technology is competitive for high-speed models because we have been developing tilt rodders since 2002. Through years of studies, we've developed improved tilt rodder technology. Korea also has a strong IT infrastructure which helps provide services for flying cars.
The advanced vehicle requires new technology such as lighter batteries, new energy sources, and self-driving technology. As well as solving technical issues such as making lighter flying cars, experts say it is equally important to make detailed safety rules for them.
Another part which is very important is regulating the traffics. Some vehicles may fly right near or above land, or some, the vehicles may go up above that. So there might be some structures of road for these vehicles. So we have to make, quite precise regulations to make these vehicles freely flow.
Experts differ on exactly when these cars will be fully commercialized, but many expect it to be around by 2040. Morgan Stanley forecasts the market to grow to $1.5 trillion by then. Global tech giants, including the U.S., France, and Germany, have already started developing flying cars and will compete with South Korea to lead the future market. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Famous actors from the Terminator franchise are in Seoul to promote the latest film in the blockbuster series. And our Kim Jae-hee got to talk to the stars.
Androids, shootouts, man versus machine. The Terminator franchise is back with everything you're looking for in a sci-fi movie. Directed by Tim Miller, Terminator Dark Fate reunites Linda Hamilton and Arnold Schwarzenegger after 28 years as they return to their roles of Sarah Connor and T-800 Terminator. At a press conference in Seoul on Monday, they both said they were delighted to be working together again.
When we were there and in our costumes, I think it was a very natural, organic place that, we just fell right back into it. I mean, I had been training for a year, and I felt very, very ready. And then seeing Arnold and working with Arnold just sort of finished the picture for me.
Now to be back again at Dark Fate, and to have, everyone be united again. Jim Cameron worked on this movie and created the story, and to have Linda Hamilton back now again, it's really fantastic. So this is a really great combination.
Schwarzenegger also talked about how he and Linda both overcame their age through lots of training.
Now when it comes to my age, I really don't feel my age. I think it is because I train all the time. But I do, kind of prepare myself for months in advance. And I work with the stunt department, with the stunt coordinators. For 1 year, she trained every day and did the same kind of a training to prepare for the role as she did for Terminator 2. And, to do that at the age of 60 is a whole different ballgame, I'm sure. But she did it. And so now she doesn't only set a new standard, I think, for women in general of what they can do on a screen, but also what a 60-year-old woman can do on a screen.
Schwarzenegger also said the Terminator franchise is not just for U.S. audiences, but is meant to entertain people all around the world. With action movie legend James Cameron back on board as producer, the Terminator fans will be hoping the sixth installment in the franchise lives up to expectations when it hits Korean theaters on October 30th. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News.
It's now time to take a look at Arirang's digital media content. And today we have another episode of When in Korea, or Wink, with Justin.
It is already the fall season. The unwelcome guest that comes every fall is loneliness. You know, it's already been 8 years since I came to Korea, and yet I'm alone again this year. But it's okay, because I'm an expert at spending time by myself.
표정 외롭다 표정.
But even I'm scared of one thing: eating pork belly by myself.
I am so hungry now.
Why? Why is there no place to eat pork belly alone?
So as we all know, Korean pork barbecue is already very famous and delicious. But it can be very uncomfortable for a foreigner who's in Korea alone to find a place they can really sit down and enjoy by themselves. But there is a perfect spot where you can enjoy Korean pork barbecue by yourself. Let's check it out. Okay, so we're finally in the restaurant, and I just sat down. As you can see, the table is very small. It's designed for one person. And you got the little barbecue, the gas here, a TV here with full display. Yeah, I think this is the best part. This is my favorite part. Because you know when you're home alone, you like to just kind of hold your phone and watch some Netflix or YouTube by yourself. And oh, the food is here. 와, 냄새 장난 아니다. 죽여주네 아주. It's actually really good. On a scale of 1 to 10, 5 being average, like most kind of not so great Korean barbecue restaurants, taste alone, I'd give it almost like a 7.8. You know, when you go to a restaurant, especially an open Korean barbecue restaurant, it can be really loud, right? Because a lot of groups of people are drinking together, they're eating together, they're talking while making the food. But as you can tell, I'm the only person speaking here. And I think every now and then I can hear the owner or the server say, "Oh, welcome to our store." But I don't even know who's walking in, because I'm just so focused on myself. And the privacy is very well constructed. That's another huge plus. Okay, so we're almost finished with the 1인분, but usually for most guys especially, it's not enough. 1인분 is not enough. So the very interesting thing here is they actually have something called 반인분. And at a Korean barbecue store, they never have 반인분s. Sometimes some places don't let you order less than 2 people sets. But here they have a half set. I hope you guys will come and try it for yourself. Even if you come to Korea alone, please don't miss out on Korean barbecue.
High levels of fine dust have appeared for the first time in about 3 months. For more details, let's turn to our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle.
Now, we started the week with hazy skies due to the high concentrations of fine dust. Now, the air quality has recovered as of late afternoon, but more smog is expected to appear later tonight. The fine dust is forecast to be at bad levels again tomorrow, especially here in the capital and the western parts of the country. The weather itself will be favorable, with just a few clouds providing some shade from the sun, and daytime highs on the warm side going above the seasonal average tomorrow. And speaking of temperatures, there is about 10-degree difference between the lows and the highs, so dress accordingly. The Seoul starts the day at 13 degrees, Daegu 12, Busan to 15, and Jeju at 17 degrees Celsius. The country will be under mild readings again tomorrow, with highs rising to the low to mid-20s. And other than Gangwon and the southern provinces, the nation will be rain-free this week. And as of this weekend, the mercury will plunge further, and we will start feeling the chilly autumn weather. Now I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
And that wraps up this edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for News in Depth coming up next.